athletics, and what was your first introduction to athletics?
Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me tonight. It's a bit of an honour to be presenting to Crusaders and following our Olympian, Mr. Chamney, who I think is on, and he says he's going to give me a little bit of abuse during the call. I was a little surprised, to be honest, to be asked, but thank you and appreciate it. And I see a lot of my family on, my little niece there, Beth, and my kids are in the background, probably ask a few questions later on. But I suppose it started as a kid. I was 8 or 9 years of age, and I played football, soccer, GAA, did everything. And it was a pal of mine was in athletics. Him and his twin sister were very good, and it was a gang of us just went down to the local club, Mid Sutton, and I kind of started there, and we chased them, and they were always winning medals, and I think that's what attracted me to the club.
Sorry, you were chasing the women, was it?
Chasing the twins. One was a boy, one was a girl, and we just kind of got into it, and age 8, 9, 10 started to run cross country, run relays, and that was it. I got hooked on athletics then, and I continued on until I was about 13 or so. I ran cross country, track, whatever was available, we did it. And at age 13, it was a funny story actually. There was an All-Ireland down in Nina back before there was even an indoor tartan track. It was just a mud track. It was a barn back then. And the coach, Danny McLafferty, who's still there 40 years later coaching, said to my dad, maybe take him down if you're interested, but don't worry about it, And Dad's, as he always did, he drove us all around the country, any of the four of us, for any sport that we were doing. Took a look at the map, had routed out the plan, the journey, how long it would take us to get there. And he called Danny up. He said, Danny, there's a Saturday race and a Sunday race. And he goes, yeah, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Saturday's heats and Sunday's finals. You won't make the finals. Just go up and down in the day. You don't need to worry about B&Bs or staying overnight. So sure enough, we drove down on the Saturday. I had my new stopwatch, which I got for Christmas that year, and I played with it for the whole 3.5 hours down. We didn't have the fancy motorways back then, so I was on the start line, won my heat, sure enough, and we had to drive all the way back up to Dublin that night, drove all the way back down on Sunday, and I actually won the final of the 1500 under 13s, and that was my first title. So funny story, Danny told us not to go down, not to worry about it, and to this day my dad still gives him awful grief.
I wonder how he didn't charge him for the petrol.
He should have. But I then actually gave up athletics. I stopped. I went into secondary school, and I kind of went for rugby. Little small skinny guy. I was the perfect I was the perfect fit for rugby, small skinny guy. But I had a bit of speed on the wing, so did that. And then I was still small in second and third year, so they moved me from winger to scrum half. I was still small in fourth year, so I was like the third string scrum half, and I was just used as a punching bag basically. So I said, right, that's it, rugby's gone. Tried everything, tennis, golf, basketball, the whole lot. Then in sixth year, I was deciding, right, leaving cert year, that's it, I'm going to study hard. I'm going to do the study sessions after school. We 3 sessions, 3 to 4, 4 to 6, and then 6:30 to 10 o'clock. And it was announced over the intercom in school, Eugene O'Neill, please, to the principal's office. So you can imagine in sixth year common room, all the lads, whoa, Huge, you're in trouble. So I walked all the way down to this far corner of the school, which if you had to walk down there, everybody knew you were going to the principal's office. So I was going in there going, oh, geez, what did I do here? So Father Bradley was his name, Father William Bradley. He was a Donegal man. And his nephew was actually Gary Crossan. I don't know if anybody remembers Gary. Yeah, marathon runner, married to Maria McCambridge. Yeah. That's him, yeah. And he sat me down and he says, well, what are you doing this year, Eugene? And I said, oh, I'm doing my leaving cert, father. Gonna really work hard, study hard, and I've signed up for all 3 studies after school. Gonna give it everything. And he said, okay, right. No, but what are you doing for sports? I said, oh, no, I'm done with the sports now. I really want to focus on the studies. And I thought I was saying everything right. And he says, I want to see you out running 2 days a week around the pitches up there for first study, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was like, what? Okay, great. Excuse to skip study. Didn't tell mum and dad that for a little while. So I bring the gear in and I was doing my laps, just tipping away to do something. And John O'Connor, who many of you probably know, was involved with the club back then. He used to coach a lot of discus and shot putters, and they all happened to be on the senior cup team playing rugby. And he was up watching a match one day and he spotted me. And he asked the lads, who's your man running around doing the laps there? Would he be interested in joining the club? So it was a guy called David Shanley and Emmett Kilduff, and they came up to me in the common room, told me John was asking who was I, and passed on his details. And that's how the connection to Crusaders came about. I went down to the club. At the time, it was in Mount Merion Cricket Club. Do you remember Mount Merion?
Yeah.
Yeah, just there by the RDS. Lovely grass area around the cricket pitch. So we went down there, and that's where I took up my athletics. John was my coach from then on.
How did the principal know you were a bit of a runner?
I think I was first year. Mum can probably correct me on this. I think I was first year when I won that All Ireland.
Ah, okay.
So I kind of did that, won it, and he knew I was a runner.
Okay.
And to be honest, when we were doing training for the rugby, there was a bit of fitness, and I used to lap the whole team, doing 5 laps of the pitches, and I was just known as the runner who played rugby.
Yeah, the whippet probably as well, when you think of it. And so that's when you started training seriously. So you would have been what, 17?
Yeah, about 17. Yeah. And I got involved in schools across country. John was great. He seems to know everybody, still does to this day. Put me in touch with Eddie McDonough and a couple of his athletes who were the same age. Alan Dunleavy at the time was one of the top guys. He was up the road in Blackrock, and I used to go out on a Monday and do a 10 miler with him. So just starting running 10 miles on a Monday, I used to crawl back into study and fall asleep for the last hour of it. I was so exhausted. But Alan subsequently went on to Arkansas, got a scholarship there. A pal of his, Carl Byrne, we used to go for runs up in UCD. And that's sort of how I started back into training properly. And I used to do, I'd say, 3, maybe 4 days a week then. I do 300s on the track. We had a thing called the East Leinster Cross Country League. So I started to get into that. And I did my first All Ireland that December. It was like under 17 or 18, and I got 10th, top 10, got medals. So again, delighted with myself. I was always a man for the medals. And from there, kind of drove on. And that June would have been my first sort of outing over the steeplechase, 2000 steeplechase in the Irish schools. And I got second spot in that.
Now there's a question, because I thought that was going to come later. So it was that stage. How and who looked at you and said, I'm going to put him over hurdles?
So we did it in school. I was decent enough for cross country. I'd come, I think it was 6th in Leinster or something like that. And the 1500, there was a couple of twins called the Walker twins from Newbridge. Very, very good. So it was kind of John was hedging his bets a little bit, and he said, look, do the 15 and the steeplechase and see what happens. Sure enough, I was 4th in the 15 in the Leinsters, didn't qualify for the All Irelands, and I did in the steeple. And that's how the steeple came about. It was to get points for the school, and he hasn't told me this, but it was to hedge bets and maybe get me to an All Ireland final.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, he's on.
Is he?
He's on there somewhere. He can put his face up now for us. And at that point, was John a steeplechase coach, or did he then educate himself? Because your technical side of your steeplechase was super.
Yeah, John, I actually have a couple of points made here. And one of the things, John was always studying, always learning. His background was shot put, discus. That's what
Yeah.
he was. He was a thrower. So to start coaching a middle distance guy, it was like chalk and cheese, you know, apples with pears. We were working with. But as you know, he's an extremely successful solicitor. Very, very good at what he does, and he applied the same logic to his coaching. So he would get in touch with Liam Moggan, Brendan Hackett, brother John Dooley, and he would be plugging everybody and anybody for information on what's the best way to train a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid for middle distance. And I suppose the steeple early on as a junior under 23, 15 was my event. I did do schools, but I didn't really focus on the steeple. But I think part of John's background was, do you remember Zbigniew Orwell, the
No.
Polish coach?
Oh, sorry, I do. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah,
So
he was more
he was
technical.
around at that stage, with a coach, the O'Reillys, John O'Reilly and his brother
Mm.
Jerry, Dave Matthews, those guys. And there was a lot of weights and plyometrics in his training methods, which
Which at that point were newish. They'd been around a little while, but they were progressing, weren't? Yeah, East European. That's where he brought it in. Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So John would have applied a lot of that to my training, even though I was doing 15, and I think it benefited my steeplechasing later on. So we focused on the 15, and I'd pretty good success. I became one of the top juniors and under 23s fairly quick. I got an international, I was still a junior, and I got an international senior cap for 1500. It was called the West Athletic Games. And that was a big opportunity. There was the two Walker twins, myself and a guy called Larry Morrissey from Waterford. We got on the team, and we were all gunning for the world junior 1500 meter time. It was the first time I beat Kev Walker. Andrew got the time that day, around 3:48. I think I ran 3:51 low, so I missed the time by a fraction. And that was kind of the story of my life for 3 or 4 years. I missed all of the standards by 0.3, 0.5, 0.8 for all of those European junior, European under 23, World Juniors. So I was on the cusp, but I wasn't quite there, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And then I don't know why, but in '98, I ran a steeplechase nationals.
National seniors.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the reason why. But I entered it anyway, and I won it. So that was my first title in 1998, 3000 steeple. So I then went into the wilderness, went on Erasmus to France. Still ran, still trained, enjoyed myself. Had a lot of connections, joined a local athletics club, did all of that as part of my studies, and graduated in around 2000. And I'd sort of had a few years where I was 6th in nationals, 7th in nationals, wasn't running really fast, but I wasn't really focused on it. I was kind of doing my studies and that kind of thing. So I started to think, okay, what am I going to do? So when I graduated, I started to work for 6 months as a developer. My background is computer science. I was just, my mind wasn't there yet. So I said, right, I'm going to give this a go. And I was training with Niall Bruton at the time. And he was going over to the States to train. And I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go. We're going to go over, train, run the indoor season. And the World Cross was on, or supposed to be on, in Dublin that year, 2001.
Yeah.
So the plan was to go over there, go full time, give it everything I've got, and come home, try and make that team, and then get some funding or some sponsorship, you know, having represented Ireland in Dublin in the World Cross. and foot and mouth hit, the foot and mouth disease, and World Cross was cancelled. So I was home and I was like, okay, what'll I do? So I said, okay, I'll I'm going to have to get a job. I realized in the States, or I made a decision in the States that I wasn't going to continue and try and go live the dream and go for the Olympics and all of that stuff. I always felt I was maybe good enough, but I wasn't sure. And I think that doubt was confirmed when I was over there for that 6 months. I was running 4:03 for the mile kind of time, which is decent, but it's not great. And there was a chap there, I met him, Matt Holthouse. He was a 3:54 miler. We ran in the race with Alan Webb when he first broke 4 minutes indoors as a schoolboy. Yeah, 2001, that was kind of when I decided, right, I'm going to get a job now and focus. But I always had that love of running. I still had it. So I kept it up, obviously. Worked a full-time job while working. Went back and did my master's, which opened up some great opportunities because I was an elder statesman for World Student Games at that stage.
Oh, yeah.
And I got 2 great trips, one to Daegu in Korea for the track and field, and the following year to Turin in Italy for the World Cross Country. So obviously that was tough. You're working full time, 9 to 5. You're trying to train. So I really had to knuckle down, and it was all the little things that you had to look after. Your diet, your sleep, your rest, keep the drinking to a minimum. I think my brothers and sisters thought I was absolutely bonkers. I'd go out on nights out and I wouldn't drink. I'd drive so I could get home to bed early and rest and make sure I recovered. But I had to, because I still wanted to do well in my running, and I had a full-time job to still do. So I focused on just doing the steeple at that stage, and Daegu was one of the most amazing experiences ever. I've heard guys like Gary Ryan, James Nolan, Peter Coughlin talk about it and say it's like a fun Olympic Games, because you're a student and everybody's going out there to enjoy themselves without that pressure of Olympic Games, so you're not really in the spotlight, but it's exactly the same. You go there as a team, you're in an World Student Games village, all the countries are there, you're swapping t-shirts and caps and the whole lot. You go down and you support your teammates in soccer, tennis, golf, whatever it is. So it was an absolutely amazing experience. And another story there is I was going out with my now wife back then, and she tagged along on the trip and managed to stay in the World Student Games student village with me on one of the hammer throwers passes. So we used to, at night, walk back out with the pass, give it to her, and she'd come in, and she stayed in the village with us. So there was a guy's house and a girl's house. She stayed with all the girls, and to this day we're still friends with all of the team. So it was good. As Jim Kilty would say, you finished where you were ranked, Eugene.
Say it as it was. I've a couple of kind of quick-ish questions for you. So you competed mainly cross-country 15, and then you moved to the steeple. Of the 3, which was your favorite race?
I think I love the steeple, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You glided over those barriers.
I liked cross-country 15. Again, I loved it, but steeple, I really, I fell in love with the steeple. And I think part of that was John's influence, as well as the group of guys that we had on the team. We'd James Matthews, who's my cousin, he was a 400 hurdler. We'd Peter Coughlin, who was a 110 hurdler. Ian MacDonald came through later. So there was a lot of hurdlers in the group, including me as a steepler. So we could do a lot of things together as a team, even though they were sprinters and I was middle distance. So I learned a lot from those guys. And I don't know whether that was part of why I like steeple, but it definitely helped with my technique, and maybe the combination of being a middle distance runner who was reasonably good at national level and a good hurdler. The combination just
worked.
Helped.
That exactly. Was something I was going to say in relation to the steeple. I mean, it's a strength event, but there is the technical side of it helps keep your strength. And for you, I always thought you were a super technician at it. And I'm curious because I've no recollection of this. Could you clear the water jump, or were you a foot on over?
Never tried. Foot on.
Oh, did you not? Yeah, because in those days, there very few people cleared it. They would have, not that it's that long ago, Eugene, but the technique, your foot on it and jump, wasn't it, and avoid the water.
It is foot on, yeah. And
Yeah.
if I was coaching, I would say foot on.
And out of curiosity, do you think there's any specific type of athlete that you would say would be suited to the steeplechase?
I'm delighted you asked that. Now, I might be biased, and this could be a controversial thing to say. You mentioned the guys qualifying for the finals tonight, a bunch of 3:39 guys, which is fantastic. Even Andrew running 3:37. In my opinion, I think all those guys should be looking at steeplechase. If you look at the ranking list, 3:37, where is it on European or world ranking list for a 15, or even a 750 3,000 meter guy? Where is that on a ranking list? I think because of the technical element of steeplechase, if you work on that technique and you can get that differential down, you have a huge opportunity to be probably a European finalist, and if you're lucky, you might be a European medalist because of that technical element. Look at the world champs and the Olympics, where Europeans are winning medals. It's predominantly in technical events.
Yeah.
And I think my differential was 34 seconds, which is pretty decent. I'm looking at that guy. I did a little bit of research earlier. Looking at that guy from France, Grissier, Jimmy Grissier.
Yeah.
8:24 steepler. And up to this year, he's run a super time. He's run 7:39 3K, but he was about a 7:52 3K guy. Now he's 13:15 and 3:36 for 15, so he's well able to run.
Yeah.
But again, 3:36, it's good, but it's not great. And 13:15, it's good, but it's not going to get you a medal. So I think he's right to go to steeple and try and get that down. 8:24 gets him in the top 10 in Europe in the rankings. So for me, I think any middle distance runner, it's very easy to keep in touch with hurdling and to train. And yes, by all means, keep going, 3:39, 3:41, whatever you are. But do that little bit of hurdling at training, do that little bit of work, and you never know, you might be a steeplechaser.
I remember seeing Emma Coburn recently, the American girl in the World Champs, and against the Kenyans. She had a superb hurdling technique, and the Kenyans were dreadful at the hurdling. And every time they went ahead of her, when they came to a jump, she'd jump and she'd be back in the lead again. And she won that race. First time a non-Kenyan had won the race in the worlds, which kind of proves your point. If you have a good technique,
it makes it easier. Yeah. In relation to the technique of the hurdling and in particular the water jump, you obviously did specific training sessions to get your technique correct. And you mentioned there the pliers and gym work and all that. You would have done specific sessions for that, wouldn't you?
Yes, but subtly. I mean, a lot of what I did was normal middle distance training or cross country training. Winter work was all about, getting your mileage up and your base work, getting those long reps and tempo runs in. Nothing different to what most of the guys on the call here are probably doing. But John would always have me do an element of plyometrics at the end of a session. I'd always have weight sessions thrown in one evening a week during the winter as well. And that was all building that steeplechase, that hurdling base through the winter. It wasn't running and jumping over barriers and doing sessions in the winter. It was just keeping in touch, keeping the hips strong and mobilized, getting the glutes, quads strong for that landing. I mean, I think it was Mark Carroll said it to me once. He goes, Jesus boy, you're some boy taking up the steeplechase. It's like you're a punching bag. Every time you hit the ground, it's like taking a punch for 3K, and especially that last kilometer when you start to get fatigued, the landing gets heavier, legs get heavier, and it is literally like taking punches. So you've got to train yourself for that. And I think that's what we did over the winter, was with the weights, with the plyometrics. You're training yourself for those punches in the race in the summer when you're running the steeplechase. Then it would it would change then as we moved into the summer. So we'd be at the track more, there'd be hurdles available. So we'd start to do a lot more drills over hurdles. But again, with the bunch of guys I was with, it was a bit of fun. You know, it was skipping over the hurdles. It was trail leg, lead leg stuff. It was kind of easy, fun drills. Warm downs, I'd always throw a couple of hurdles in lane 8, and I'd just be jogging for the first 5-10 minutes of my cool down, hopping over hurdles just to get used to the rhythm all the time, disrupting your running, whether it was running 8-minute miling pace or in a session running 64-second laps. You're just trying to get your body used to having to focus on a hurdle, not chop your stride. And it was simple things, literally, you know, on a cool down, trying a couple of hurdles on the back straight in lane 8. So you'd have to focus and jump over those hurdles. We then, when we got into racing season, we started to throw in proper sessions. So we would, you know, we might do 6x800 every second one over barriers, or 10x400 every second one over barriers. We'd do time trials, things like that. So we would do proper sessions where you're going over the barriers. But again, I wouldn't have done a lot because the impact, the fatigue that it brings onto the body, you can't do too much hurdling. So any younger athletes there who are thinking about it, don't go out now and start hurdling every session and every run, heading to the track and start, you know, jumping over barriers. It's a little and often was kind of the key recipe for us. And building it over the winter, as I said, with the weights and the plyos, getting into the little bit of technique work at the start of the summer, and then fine tuning and focusing a little bit like your speed work. Michael will tell you how to fine tune and get you ready for an 800. It was the same for steeple, and the hurdling technique was the same type of principle applied.
Eugene, you've mentioned it there, and it's something that comes up with athletes all the time, particularly athletes who want to run, say, an 8 and a 15 during the summer, you know, and drop down from the cross country. It's a question that always gets asked because they want to prove me wrong. What's your average mileage winter versus summer? What was the difference?
I was always a light mileage guy. I got an injury in '99 trying to bump up my mileage, and I always kept it low. So I would have been in the winter probably 70s, might have crept up to 80, but that was a big week for me. So it was more like 65, 70, 75 kind of mileage. Summertime would have been a little bit less, maybe 60-ish. And then obviously when you're in full racing season, you're dropping right down to 40. Yeah. And a lot of that is just recovery stuff.
I think there's a bit of shock on some of the people's faces there when you said that, you know, 70 was low mileage, but there, you know, but yeah, obviously there was a difference. What was your favorite training session? Or did you have one?
I had a few, yeah. It changed over the years, actually. I used to like the shorter, faster stuff when I started, probably because I was able for it. I then evolved. Eamon Coughlin used to do a session, 2400s, and I used to do that with his group, Bruton and Healy. I don't know whether it was because I was training with those guys, but I used to love that on a Tuesday night out in Alsa, 2400s off 60 seconds. And then later, as I sort of got older, I started to like tempo runs a little bit more. I think it was because I realized you need to be strong.
Yeah, easier on the body.
Probably.
Yeah. Moving on to your the other international in your life. So sport is big in the O'Neill house, and your missus was an international.
So I knew you were going to ask this. Yes, she was captain of the Irish volleyball team. I actually think we captained the Irish team at the same time.
Oh, well.
Just before little Charlie, who I see is on the camera now, just before he came along, Gemma captained Ireland for volleyball. But before that, Mum and Dad were fairly sporty, and actually all my family. Mum is former Wimbledon player. She played in junior Wimbledon. My dad played rugby for Leinster and tennis for Ireland. My sister is dying for me to mention this. She played tennis for Ireland as well. And my other brother is +2 at golf. So we'd sport in the family for a number of years. Yeah.
Well, and this leads me on to the kids. And for the kids, no pressure after that list. So I know that Charlie is following in your footsteps running, because I've seen him in the Phoenix Park in cross country. What about Harry and Anna May?
Yeah, Charlie, Harry, and Amy May are my three, and Beth is my niece, who's there in the Mid Sutton colours. You can see her there. She's allowed to stay up late today. They're all in our local club, Mid Sutton. All runners, encouraged by myself and my sister. Even during COVID, we've been trying to get them out for a junior park run as much as possible. We do a family 2K every Sunday. Mums, dads, the whole lot of us do it. Even our little nephew Mark, who's only 5, he did his first one last week. He was delighted with himself. But yeah, they all love it. I don't really push any of them into it. In fact, the opposite. They play soccer, GAA, swimming, everything. Keep them involved in everything. But I think there is a natural love for athletics for one of them in particular. No pressure, just not going to mention that name.
No, we won't say anything.
He's chuckling away there in his green top, with his stash of medals behind him. But yeah, they do love it. I think that was something that I had as a kid as well. You know, when you're playing football in the field with a couple of jumpers as the posts and someone boots it miles down the field, I was always the guy that ran out and got the ball, 200 meters and came back. I just liked running. I don't know. I'd prefer to run to school than cycle to school. It was just a natural love of something very normal, very, very natural to us all,
Yeah, I'm going to ask you something that it's just popped into my head. So they're usually dangerous questions when Michael's going, that pops into your head. You had that break from when you were 13 to kind of 17, and then again, you were in and out and kind of fell in and out of love with it. Do you regret not sticking with it at the time and changing? Yeah.
Not at all. No.
Good.
If anything, I think that's why I kept running for so long. I kept going until I was about 32 or 3.
Yeah.
And a lot of my pals who I would have known as juniors up to 21, 22, they'd all stopped well before I finished. Alan, like the guy Alan Dunleavy and Carl Byrne, they were gone 10 years before I finished. So I think that kind of prolonged my running. It probably took a bit of pressure off. If I was a really good under 14, 15, 16-year-old, I think there was a bit of pressure. But that said, James Nolan is a great pal, and he ran right through from under 10s, winning all the way up to Europeans. He kept going right till the same age as me. So, I mean, I think it's horses for courses, really.
Yeah. You're running now. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, back doing a bit. Last year, I kind of went a bit mad. Got back into the running after a long
More
break.
spikes in your training sessions, just saying.
Well, I actually did a little analysis on that. So last year, I hadn't really run much for guts of 10 and a half years, Charlie. Since Charlie came along, the kids started to arrive and I more or less backed off. I started the business and running just fell by to the side. So when COVID came, obviously everyone's at home. There's no commutes. There was no traveling. Had a bit more time. So I started to train again. And again, got the love back. And you know that feeling when you're fit?
Oh, yeah.
And you can go out for a run and you come back and you just feel great and you're not exhausted, you're not stiff, you're not sore. You just have that feeling of being fit. Got that back again and I was loving it. And I just did too much. But that was kind of me. I used to always give everything 110%. And I analysed it. I did 100k in March, 100k in April, 200k in May, 400k in June, and I was headed towards something ridiculous in July when I hurt my calf again. So I'm back now doing something more sensible, 2, 3, 4 days a week, and trying to stick at that. I'm getting fit again. I'm on 4 days, and I'm dying to get out more, but I'm really trying to stick to 3 or 4 days a week and keep it easy, not really do any sessions. Just
leave the spikes where they are for now.
leave the spikes behind. Yeah, somebody told me one day not to wear
Somebody
spikes.
told you many days.
So yeah, just trying to get a little bit more consistency, and who knows, might try and come back for the Masters for the crew at some stage.
Yeah, we'd be looking forward, and especially road relays. You liked the road relays. They were great.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're coming up in September, apparently.
Did all three, did the mile, the 2 and the 3 mile for the club.
Yeah. In the day, and in those days, folks, it was a 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 ish, wasn't it? There were 6 legs.
Yeah.
And on your business side, you've you're self-employed now, set yourself up in your business. Do you want to give us a breakdown of what you do and how you got into it?
Yeah. So as I said, when I started to work, John's going to pop up again. John set me up, got me started. I was in IT, computer science, so I was doing a lot of IT admin in his law firm, which was perfect because John, being my coach, would allow me off for 2-hour lunches. Would let me come in late if I had a hard session the night before. But that wore a bit thin after a while, so he had to get rid of me. But I was actually taken into a company who specialized in a service called electronic discovery, e-discovery, which is essentially the management of documents for large legal cases. So back then it would have been predominantly hard copy documents. So we would have scanned, made everything electronic, put it into a database. Everything goes through for a review by the legal team, and then it gets discovered or disclosed to the other side. Parties swap documents. So I did that at a company for about 5 years. I just decided, I'm doing okay at this. I seem to be decent. I'd like to start my own company. So in about 2006, we had just decided to get married. We had a mortgage, and I decided to give up my job and start a company. So I started on my kitchen table with a laptop, and my father-in-law gave me a back office, a spare room he had in his building, and I took it from there and grew it over the years. And that was sort of when my running stopped, because I really focused on the business. And as I said, I used to give everything 110%. I couldn't do both. And if there's one regret that I do have, it was stopping. I should have tried to do 3 days a week, 4 days a week, just keep going a little bit, because I literally went from 70, 80 miles a week to 0. And that's probably a regret I have on the running side. But yeah, took the bull by the horns and set up the business then. And I think my running skills helped me a lot. My discipline that I had learned from John, training plans, having to have everything organized, have your lunches, your food, everything mapped out for the week for training. You had to be very, very focused for your training while you were working. And when I set up the business, I think that carried through, and I had to do exactly the same. Like I was literally for 6 months wondering on a Friday, where is the next check coming for next week? How am I going to pay for the mortgage? How am I going to pay for food? Then I started to take on staff, and it was the same thing. It was, how am I going to pay for wages this month? And like I think I had a good drive, and that's what I really applied in the business. And I transferred what I learned in my running to my business and became reasonably successful. About 4 years ago, was merged in with an American company, and then private equity came in and we did well. So now we're about 120. We've offices here, Chicago, Dallas, LA. We're opening in the UK, and looks like we'll have APAC by the middle of this year. So
Yeah.
it was a tough road at the beginning, but well worth it. And I definitely think for any of the young guys on here again, no matter what level you're at, I think the discipline and the focus that you put into your running will definitely help you in your careers at a later stage.
Excellent. For those listening in, I have 3 questions left for Eugene. So if you've anything that we haven't touched on, we'll in about 5 minutes time, we'll be giving you the opportunity to ask a really tough question, hopefully. Next one for me is, I know you're coaching juveniles in your local club. How are you enjoying that?
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah. I'm back in Mid Sutton, my local club. It's only a juvenile club, so don't worry. But that's where I started. 2 of the coaches that started coaching me when I was 8 or 9 years old are still there, Gertie Gilbert and Danny McClafferty. They founded the club in, I think it was 78. So there's about 10 of us coaching, and all of us were former junior athletes when we were kids from the area. So we coach anything from 6 years up to, we're about 16, 17 years of age now. So we're managing to hang on to the teenagers a little bit longer. Traditionally, Mid Sutton would have got to 12 or 13, and then they would have gone to Raheny or given up. So we're doing a good job trying to keep those teenagers. And yeah, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. It's great.
My next one is a curiosity one. If you turn to your right and look behind you, what's that cup up there? Your left. Excuse me. Sorry, you. To your left.
That's my son Harry's tennis trophy from the summer.
It's very classy. I thought that's probably an even better story than if it was a running one. Harry. Oh, he's got that. So he's tennis as well as running.
Oh yeah.
Get one here.
It's not the missing Nearly Bandon Ree cup, is it?
That's one of my prized possessions.
Jimmy can tell me there's been a cup missing in action for the last number of years. The Louis.
Yeah, but you probably find it. You just see that again. I didn't get a good look at it. Which one is that?
That was. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that. Can you?
Yeah, European Cup 2004. So that would have been Ireland. Were you the captain of that?
No. Terry McHugh would have been captain.
Oh yeah. So you would have been doing steeple and.
I did steeple. That was about the reason I have that there is that I was second that year. Best I ever did. I got 3 of them. I was second in that one in Reykjavik in Iceland.
Oh wow. That
was one of the things again about the athletics, doing the steeple. The places we got to see and got to go were amazing. You know, cities that you would never
go to.
Think of, like Daegu was one. Did a good bit in the States that year. Bilbao in Spain. Got to see the Guggenheim Museum there. A place called Namur in Belgium, and we took a trip into Brussels. We went to Reims in France, to the right of Paris, which is the champagne capital of France. That was an interesting race, trying to run with bottles of champagne. But like some really good, interesting cities that we got to go and see, and then the likes of European Cup team champs. I got the opportunity to be selected and to be in the mix with the Dave Matthews and the James Nolans. I wasn't going to get picked over them for 8 or 15, but steeplechase I did, and I got to go to Reykjavik and Aarhus in Denmark and Lahti in Finland. So they were 3 super trips. Again, places you just probably would never
go to.
Go. Yeah. We saw the Blue Lagoon, the warm baths in Iceland. We saw all that stuff. So really interesting trips, great times.
My last question for you is in relation to hints and tips for up and coming young athletes. You've already given some, in particular, the insight into what you brought to your professional side is very interesting. But any hints, anything that you haven't covered, Eugene, with younger kids in mind?
I think, yeah, once you love running, just keep doing it. Don't try and overtrain. Always do a little bit less than you think you should. The key to running is consistency, not how much you can do or how fast you can go. I learned that the hard way a few times. You hear about guys getting these injuries and it puts them out for 6 or 8 weeks. That fitness that you lose in 6 or 8 weeks is huge compared to doing a 5-mile run instead of an 8-mile run. You know, you're not going to lose a whole lot by doing a little bit less. If you do become reasonably successful, definitely apply yourself, and it's all about the little things, as I said, like doing your mileage, doing your sessions is one thing, but stretching, diet, getting physio, massage, ice baths, all those little things that used to drive my family mad. What is he doing now? He's rolling on a roller in the back garden, or he's filling up the brown bin with water and ice. Jesus, this guy's crazy. But those little things, all those little things add up and help with your rest and your recovery and with your running. It's not just about run, session. There is so much more to it, and if you can build those things into your lifestyle, it'll definitely help your running for sure. It's a famous lap out in Phoenix Park, which Eamon Coughlin christened as the Munich Lap. When he was training for the Munich Games, he had a lap that started at the magazine fort, went down the 2 dips, ran the back of the forest, came back down the 2 dips and finished at the magazine fort. He had a 1200 and a 1600 lap. Yeah. And we used to do that a lot in the winter. It used to break your rhythm. So at the start, you start a session and it's nice and easy for the first 400 of a 1200, but that would break your rhythm. Then you'd go around, you'd come back, and as you're coming into your last 400 again, it's breaking your rhythm. And that's what he was all about, was trying to mirror what would happen in a 1500 when your rhythm is broken and you have to surge, you have to sprint, you have to dig in. And that was Eamon's logic for why that lap was so important for a 1500 miler.
Good. Are you happy, John? Any chastising you'd like to do to Eugene?
Didn't know you sacked him.
Anything you learned tonight?
In fairness, I think it worked well. I mean, there was colossal support from at home, from Eugene's family. There was terrific support from at home, and with Gemma, and Gemma was a sports person herself and very successful at that, so she understood it as well. And I suppose we had a good little group. I think that was, the lads all pulled each other along, and the fact that they weren't all doing the same event probably was a help, because there wasn't sort of competition on the track between them. There was a sort of healthy sort of general competition, just in terms of how you were performing in a particular session, but not competitively race-wise. And everybody learned from everybody else. I mean, you had people coming in and out and coming down to the track, like guys like Peter Coughlin, who was 6th in the World Championships. So you had a terrific range of ability and events as well. So I think all of that fed into it, but I think the support was particularly helpful,
Well, what's great for us is for Crusaders, and I know last year I had a couple of women interested in moving up to the steeple to trying it out, and I had intimated this, but we hadn't got it going because then COVID hit, but that we have a superb coach in John and a superb coach athlete in Eugene, still in the club, who will come down and give us a bit of a dig out on initial sessions to get them going and get them started on drills and how to get over them, over the hurdles.
Yeah, anytime, for sure. I'd love to do that.
Except
Love to do
Lisa
that.
Shine, who volunteered to do the league there year before last, Lisa, and not knowing, having never gone over a hurdle. Now, Lisa would be a lot smaller than me in height. So I brought her down to the steeple in Irishtown where the water was out of it. And I stood and I said, you will be up here, drop down there. And then she went, oh yeah, I don't think I'll do it. Thank God.
I'm not sure my head even came out up to the level of the track, Susan.
I know, I made her like walk into the dip to show if she fell in where she would be, because I was, you will have your shower and all in it, because you were so good, Lisa, to volunteer, but there's no way I was letting her do it.
I'm sure
but
attitude is
Susan-
half,
Susan,
Eugene
you
would probably
sent-
say attitude is half the battle for steeplechase.
But Susan, you sent my other daughter over the steeplechase and she'd never done it before.
She's taller.
But this is, I don't know, can you see it? That's her very first time she went into the water. Her face.
She's wearing a crew vest.
Very first time she went over a steeple.
I did the same with Lisa. I brought her down and Lisa went, oh God, you're right. Now, Fiona's that bit taller. So I brought Fiona down and said, this is what you're jumping into. And she said, oh no, I'd be okay, be okay. And I said, okay, she's a bit taller. I had visions of having to jump in and rescue Lisa. I lost her in the water jump. I will say, Eugene, you've really promoted the steeple here tonight. And I suspect that there may have been one or two considering it, and hopefully they might look into it as an event. And during the summer, please God, folks, we'll get back to some kind of normality and we'll hit on John and Eugene. Maybe we'll do a little bit of secret training first, and then we'll hit on John and Eugene to come down and give us their expertise and get you, the main thing is to get you safely over the hurdles, so you're not put off for the rest of your life.
Well, send on those couple of videos. They'd be a good start.
Oh, the drills, training drills. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, folks. Thank you all so much to everybody for turning up tonight and listening. I want a big thanks to Eugene for giving us his time, and to all his family. I'll be looking forward to seeing him back down helping us, and I'll keep an eye out for Harry and for Charlie and for Amy. Yeah, I'll be watching for you guys on the track and see, have you got your mammy or your daddy's genes? But you're bound to have both of them. You're so lucky.
You think?
So guys, thanks very much.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Really enjoyable.
Take
Thanks
care.
for having me, guys. Thank you.
Excellent.
thanks
Thank you,
again.
Eugene.